What's up, Melon Mafia? Ross Crash Dane here. Today we're going to be debriefing my thoughts from the other races this weekend. We had trucks, ARCA, Xfinity, and the Cup Series all down in Daytona for Daytona 500 weekend. Rolling off first, we'll talk about ARCA. What a mess that was. Saturday afternoon. I remember about a third of the way through the race, they had a graphic up on screen that said they had run 21 laps under caution, 8 laps under green. Something really needs to change with ARCA. That seems to be commonplace in that series anymore whenever they go to these super speedways of they run 2 laps, they wreck. They run 2 laps, they wreck. It's a lot like a lot of the iRacing stuff I've done, where people just get over aggressive. They start pushing. They don't know how to control their cars. They push people who can't control their cars, and it just ends up being, just a giant mess. Some notable entrants from that race. First one was Elio Castroneves. He was running that to get approval for the Daytona 500. And he really had a rough weekend between both Cup cars and the ARCA race. He was caught up in the first big crash on lap 4. Cody Dennison just lost it out of 4. As he said, it was fun, but managed to wad up about half the field in doing so. Spun again later on in the race. Then ultimately after the race, AJ Moyer continued to push him into one as they were trying to slow down. Hooked him right into the fence, into Colraz. Race was over by then, but that destroyed whatever was left of the Helio Castroneves car. Moving on then, Cletus McFarland, big YouTuber in the racing world. He had similar luck. Dodged the first crash that Elio was in. He was involved in the second one, I think, in the second and third ones, I believe, lap 8 and lap 15. Second one, Amber Balkan, just lost it out of 4, just spun him. Didn't hit anything, but wasn't able to get the car refired, lost a lap in the ensuing caution as they tried to get him refired. Ultimately, he did get it refired a lap down and was running out there until the next crash. At which point Amber Balkan lost it by herself. Cletus tried to slow down and just didn't have anywhere to go. As he said, he zigged when he should have zagged, and that was the end of that. He did appear on the broadcast later up in the booth. He did say that he was hoping that he'd be able to run Talladega, assuming the car can get repaired. I hope that goes better for him. From what he showed, I think he's a decent driver. I think, if other people can, stay away from him, he was not the biggest issue out on track. Winner of that race then was Brendan Queen, Butterbean, the late model driver. It's super cool to see him. I'm like late models a lot. I like to catch the cars tour whenever I can. Seeing him, especially, he had the video game car past couple years that like pixelated 03. So yeah, for me at least, that's cool to see him. I think realistically the championship for ARCA is going to come down to him and maybe Isabella Robusto in the Venturini car. So good to see him starting off the season on the right foot at least. Moving on to the truck series. This was actually the Friday night before the ARCA race. Going a bit out of order, just in terms of the order of the series. Truck series was a decent race. A lot cleaner than some of the past truck plate races have been. Not much that I can remember other than Parker Kligerman, won the race. He was DQ'd for, ride heights post-race. That is tentatively given Corey Heim the win. Kligerman and the Henderson Motorsports team, they said that they feel that they have a strong case. They're appealing the penalty. As of recording, that penalty has not been heard, not been altered. So again, at the time of recording, Corey Heim is your Daytona winner. That race ended under caution. We'll get a little bit more into this later. Within NASCAR's consistency and throwing cautions on the last lap. But there was a wreck going into 3. Kligerman, Heim, they made it through. NASCAR threw the caution. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Otherwise, FS1's still FS1. They're doing their normal things. So, yeah. Xfinity race. This one was, first race for the full season on the CW. They had the new CW graphics package. I really liked the way they did it for the most part. They made it feel like a big event. One of the things that they did is they had the scoring thing come across the bottom of the screen rather than the side, like what Fox and NBC have done. They talked to the drivers. They showed the drivers. They weren't cartoon drivers. They showed the cars. Overall, CW, I'd give them an A minus on their first real broadcast. Two or I guess minor critiques I would maybe give them is, the first one is that it felt like everything sort of had a sponsor, relative to Cup Series, whereas they'd talk about this or they'd talk about that. It was, it's a so-and-so this, it's the blah, 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 that. It's, and I get that is part of NASCAR, but even more so than the Cup Series and Xfinity races in the past, it felt kind of corporate in that sense. The only other critique is with the graphics package, if they could just give it a little bit of transparency or something rather than having just solid like gray color blocks with the names and the timing on them. Maybe make it a little bit bigger as well. Don't obviously want to make it too big. Don't want to cover up too much of the screen, too much of the action. But that was one of the things I did see. Just make it so it is a little bit easier for people to see on their TVs. In terms of the results for the Xfinity race, Jesse Love won. Austin Hill was probably the dominant car of the race. He had some sort of rear end failure. He was leaking gear oil. He ultimately did not finish the race. I think without that, though, it's fairly safe to assume that he would have, just because, like Earnhardt used to do, he'd, wherever he went, everyone else would follow. That race ended under caution. They were coming to the white. Yellow was flown right after the white flag was taken. That helped give Love the win, obviously. Only other really notable moment I remember from the Xfinity race, coming to pit road, I don't know what exactly happened. The initial report was that he lost brakes. He later blamed it on his spotter. Whatever it was, Chris Wright, that team, they made some major error. They completely misjudged pit road speed, and he plowed through the back of Ryan Truex and was it Alfredo in the 91 or who was in the 91 car? So they both continued on. His front end though was destroyed. That knocked him out of the race as well. Just silly errors and stuff. It's, at this level that really shouldn't be happening. You would hope that the driver is smart enough to know, their speed, maybe that they shouldn't be trying to pit, from back there at that speed, but it happened. That's that. Moving on to the Cup race, Donald Trump was in attendance. I saw a lot of controversy with that online, notably that people were not able to get into the race due to the security. Fox tried to warn people to get there early. NASCAR tried to warn people to get there early. So either they didn't get there early enough, or there was just something silly with the security that was happening that, not being there, I was unaware of. Thankfully for them, race was delayed for a couple hours. 10 laps in, Florida, rain, shocker. Yeah, it's, 4 or 5 out of the last 6 500s have been affected by rain, so yeah. I don't really know what to tell you there other than that it sucks, but that's just how it seems to be anymore. Say, weren't a lot of big incidents through the first and second stages. Say the first end of first stage had a Hamlin spin that collected Zane Smith and Josh Berry. Hamlin continued. Ultimately, Zane did as well, multiple laps down. Josh Berry, though, I believe was knocked out of the race from that incident. Second stage didn't really have anything notable. At one point, one of those dominant Penske cars, Logano, it looked like he was blowing up. That ultimately turned out some sort of debris got caught up into his throttle body. They were able to replace that. He would continue on. But when this was going on, he caused a large stack up in the outside lane. That ultimately caused a wreck on a restart. That ended Chastain and Castroneves' days. Again, Castroneves he had the worst luck this week. It's just every single race something happened, and none of the times it was his fault. It was just wrong place, wrong time, get hit again. I hope he comes back. He's chill guy, great racer. Really was a fan of him back when he was running Indy full time. So it's kind of a disappointment in that sense, but it's pack racing, I guess. There's not really any sort of response to that. Chastain, unfortunately, he was the one that actually hit Castroneves. He got turned up into him. That tore up his front end. Chastain was out from there. SVG, he got some nose damage in the stack up as well. Didn't technically DNF him, but it damaged him enough to where he was multiple laps down by the end of the race, not really able to keep up with the pack. So 3 out of the 4 Trackhouse cars taken out and one caution. And as you'll talk about in a minute, wasn't really the only incident that Logano was a part of causing. So moving on then to 15 laps to go. Coming down to the end of the race, you had Stenhouse pushing LaJoie up to the lead on the outside lane. Logano was sort of there between the inside and middle lanes. Stenhouse comes down to block. Logano's there. Anybody knows those two drivers. Neither of them know what the word lift or what patience are. Overall, I'd put that more on Stenhouse just because he continued to come down even as Logano was there. Logano could have lifted, though he didn't need to be in that hole, but like I've said, if you flip the roles, you put Logano as the one coming down, you put Stenhouse in that hole. Same incident happens. That's just how both of them drive. Neither of them are going to lift to give the other a break, especially that late into the Daytona 500. It has collected a couple other drivers. Ultimately ended Kyle Busch's chance. The 20 years of trying did not happen again, much to the dismay of a lot of fans. Ryan Blaney was also involved. He would later come back to in the race. Ultimately, this did take Logano out of the race, though. Next crash happened. 4 or 5 laps to go. It was it was just after the restart from that crash. Cole Custer was trying to push Christopher Bell to the lead on the outside. Christopher's car couldn't really take great pushes all day. Ultimately, that got Bell turned into the outside wall. Bell sort of came back down into traffic, and that's when Ryan Preece went flying. Kind of ramped up off him, started doing a wheelie down the backstretch. Eventually got sideways like this, sort of went flipping like that. Second big crash, second airborne crash for Preece on the backstretch of Daytona. First one was summer 2023 race when he went flipping in the 41. At this point, if he just wants to start and park races at Daytona, I really don't blame him. This was a vicious crash. Like I said, I don't think I've seen a car do that before. He's literally did a backflip doing a wheelie down the backstretch. yeah, that was nasty. Also took Bell out of the race. Larson had damage. He was able to continue though. Ended his chance at winning. Same thing with Bubba. He got some decent nose damage in it. Was able to continue though. Still, hurt his chances at winning the race. Moving on to the final lap then. We had Cole Custer, Denny Hamlin, Austin Cindric. They were fighting up there for the lead down the backstretch. From what I saw, it looked like Custer and Cindric just started pushing each other a little too hard. Ultimately, doored Hamlin. That caused a big crash on the last lap down the backstretch. They chose to race back to the flag this time, which props to NASCAR. I think that's a good decision. Especially after the controversies and the upsetness with the dual race on Thursday, and the Truck Series race Friday night. Like I said, it's a lose-lose situation with NASCAR. People are gonna be upset with them either way, especially when there's still half a lap to go. I don't think it's cut and dry like the duels were. But yeah, that allowed William Byron, Tyler Reddick to sneak through, finish 1-2. Big surprise, Jimmy Johnson hasn't got a top 5 since the 2020 finale at Phoenix. He finished third in the Shackmobile, so that's super good for him. I was a big Jimmy fan. I still am a big Jimmy fan. Super happy for him. Chase Briscoe, John Hunter Nemechek round out the top 5. That means we had not one but 2 legacy cars in the top 5. From there, 6th place finisher Alex Bowman. He was second, third coming to the white. He got hung out. He was involved in this crash. Sort of pushed his way through. Just another wrong place, wrong time. Bad luck, Bowman. It's had one or two things gone differently, I think it just as easily could have been him. In victory lane, he was ahead of both Byron and Reddick, coming to the white. Like I said, had a run, tried to make a move. They all hung him out to dry. Blaney mentioned earlier, he was involved in the previous crash. Nosed it into the wall pretty hard before he somehow came back to finish 7th. I don't know where he was on track in relation to this last crash, but good job for him. Cindric, 8th place. It looked like he was able to get it rolling after the crash. Again, he led the most laps in the race. That's going to be disappointing for him. Disappointing for Penske. The 3 of their drivers, combined to lead 2/3, 3/4 of the race. They don't come out with anything other than a couple wrecked cars. Again, disappointing for him. 9th place was Justin Allgaier in Junior Motorsports Cup debut. Good for them, good for Justin. Junior said afterward that he wants to be in the Cup Series. Would not be surprised at all if they make a couple more Cup starts this year. Would not be surprised at all if within 2 or 3 years Junior buys into a Cup team. If Junior starts a Cup team in of itself. I think this really awakened that in Dale. I think Dale wants to be here. Dale has the money. I'd expect him to be here in some capacity sometime in the future. Lastly, rounding out the top 10, Chris Buescher. Kept it clean all day. Good for him. I was expecting him to do pretty well. I was expecting him to be a little bit closer to the front, but it's Daytona. Brad was involved in one of the wrecks earlier on. He'll take it. So it's good for Buescher, I guess. Moving on next week to Atlanta. Talk a little bit more about this on Thursday. In my preseason prediction, I had Noah Gragson winning this race. I think it'll be again another Ford dominated race. Front row cars have been good there in the past. Still tentatively chalk me down for a Gragson win this Sunday, assuming it doesn't rain. I've seen a couple preliminary forecasts and it's not looking great. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll try to catch you in the next one.